G'day, it's Oscar, and we're up to challenge number 8, listening challenge number 8. Did you know that 3 is half of 8? Well, that's a story for another time. I love how these questions are all kind of daisy chaining into each other. And this one comes from Erin, and she mentioned her comments in the Deep Listening Ambassador community site. If you'd like some details, just drop the word ambassador in the chat below, and I'll explain a bit more about it there. Anyway, back to Erin. She says, "Hey, Oscar, I'm late to comment here and agree with you about the intentionality of the task. I've been in meeting environments where everybody has to go around the room and share, and honestly, it feels forced. And if it's done when not everyone agrees at the start of the meeting, it feels kind of awkward. Oscar, my question to you is, should connection happen in every meeting? Should this process take place at the beginning of every single meeting? And do you think there are other ways that we can encourage contribution beyond just speaking or verbally?" Erin, to your first question, should it happen in every meeting? I think it depends. I think it depends on how well do the participants know each other. Where is this meeting in the life cycle of the project, the product, the design? Where is it in its life cycle? Is it at the really early stages? Is it in the messy middle, or is it towards the conclusion? The other two elements I often think about is, what's the impact of this conversation, and how complex is the content needing to be discussed? Now, if you think about all of those as ingredients going in to a bowl, how do we build a recipe to bring them all together? I think we can ask different check-in questions at the beginning of the conversation when something's kind of starting off versus something that's in the messy middle. Equally, I think some people do check in, but they miss the important one, which is check out. When I talk about check in and check out, we want to notice what's changed for the participants in the meeting itself. And by missing the check out part of listening at the end of the meeting, we miss out on really important signals back to the host and the rest of the group about the impact of the meeting. Now, think about impact. If the meeting is administrative and its impact is relatively limited, maybe a check-in isn't appropriate. Maybe you just want to get the work done and move on to the next thing. If the impact is high, or there's consequences, or there's large risk, or there's some deep potential conflict, I think checking in is really critical, and checking out. Finally, thinking about the complexity of the task. This is where I think abstraction is really critical. When you're dealing with complex language, it might be jargon specific to that context, you want to abstract the complexity by asking people to check in and check out in a really abstract way. Previously, I've mentioned some of these. You might ask them what color they feel like, or do they feel like a particular sort of drink? Could be a soda versus a juice. It could be a champagne versus a red wine. Each of those allows the speaker to take themselves out of the context of the conversation and make sense of what it means for them. So for the more complex meeting types, I would strongly encourage check-in and check-out there as well. Now, to answer the second half of your question, you said, are there other non-verbal contributions we should consider to think about during the meeting? I've got a handful for you to think about. Some I've touched on before, such as webcams on or off. But the other one is really simple, is on the conferencing software itself, putting mute on or putting mute off, this could be a signal all by itself. The mute button is typically visible to all participants. And if you want to encourage the speaker, you may simply just come off mute. You may not say anything, but you may come off mute. A good host will notice who's on mute and who's not and work with that accordingly. So tip number one, use your microphone settings, mute on, mute off, as a signal to send. That's a nonverbal signal. Tip two, webcam on or off. It's okay for you to have the webcam off a part of the meeting because you might want to concentrate deeply on the content and you don't want the visual distraction for you and maybe for them as well. So having your webcams on or off, you don't have to default to either or. Think about how you might adjust that to send a signal to the group and the speaker about where you're at with this content. The other one is all the software has got a hand raising gesture, either in the reaction buttons or the emoticons. Use that because it won't only be a signal for you, but also be a signal for other participants that maybe they've got a similar kind of question as well. Don't underestimate the importance of the chat button. This is really critical as well. So you can use chat as a nonverbal way to help the group to listen to itself as well. If you've got a question like Erin, or you're bouncing off a response that we've previously provided, right now I've got nearly 1,000 questions in the database, and we are up to 4, and 4 of the questions we're up to 8 now. 4 could be half of 8, 3 could be half of 8, and 0 could be half of 8. I wonder how that's possible. If you've got a question about listening in the workplace, just leave it in the comments below. If you've got a build, if you've got a technique you use, or you've got a question like Erin that's a build on previous videos, you can see we're listening. I'm Oscar Trimboli, and along with the Deep Listening Ambassadors, we're on a quest to create 100 million deep listeners in the world. And you've given us the greatest gift of all. You've listened to us. Thanks for listening.